Um, Need confirmation on the stream.
I'm checking.
Figure out how to transfer this ringtone.
Checking sound. Looks like Twitch is back twitching again. And looks like we are live on both, so let's get her started here. Welcome everyone to the Foolish Tech Show. It is a early Monday morning, and we're here to provide support for our software and services. If you have any questions about those or like to see any product demonstrations, you can jump over to our IRC chat at foolishtechshow.com, and there's a couple of ways to join the IRC chat there. Otherwise, we're going to fill the space with just talking about random news stuff, and yeah, so welcome. So apparently that fire in Canada is getting nothing but worse, and
I've heard bad things. Yeah.
like they had to evacuate the whole town, and not only that, they had to re-evacuate the town because where they evacuated to wasn't quite far enough away, and the fire started moving towards there, so they had to move them another 200 miles down. That's pretty crazy. I would not want to be up there right now. And it looks like it's massive too. And I was reading something too about it was possibly going to hit their oil fields. Do you know anything about that?
I haven't been following it as closely. I'm pretty much going off what you're saying, but no, I didn't. In case you were asking me.
Yeah, I imagine if it's oil fields like I'm thinking, like where they have fields of oil, that would make things way freaking worse. Because oil fires do not go out easy. So I hope it's all right up there, especially if everyone's hoping to run to Canada after these presidential elections depending on the outcome. So otherwise, looks like we'll all be going to Beyond the Wall.
Oh, Brantley. Everybody's going. Half of us are going, depending on the outcome. Yeah, it just depends on which half, I think, is how it's supposed to work out. I don't know.
Supposedly, that's how it's supposed to work out. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. Oh, shoot. Quick thing before, I know we're only in here and stuff, but Lawrence at Bleeping Computer sent me an email earlier about Crypto Prevent hosting and some other questions, and I'm going to answer them, and then I'm also going to forward it to you to find some stuff about what's going on now that I don't, that I'm not 100% on. So
sure,
I'll forward that to the ticket system before I go to my doctor's appointment. Y'all, I'm going to get my thumb thing.
Oh,
That horrible looking thumb surgery I had.
it doesn't look
a
as
month ago.
that bad, but I hope it all continues to go well.
Yeah, just going to
now.
check up on it, I guess. Let's see if I can actually see what.
Compared to what it was when you showed it to me originally.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, yeah, it was ugly. Yeah, I have to. I can't hold my hand like that.
It's fine. I think we all get the idea. It's cool.
Yeah, it's just like kind of red and ugly, but and it's still like stiff and doesn't have a lot of movement. It cracks, the knuckle cracks a lot.
Did you, well, I'm gonna have to be very, very careful with my hex chatting here today because, of course, I'm
You
streaming.
only set up one.
Oh, anyway, the point is I'm leaving at 8:30, so. Yeah.
Okay.
So I want
Good luck. Hope you come back with your thumb.
yeah, I hope it
Yeah.
goes smoothly. Did you see this story about you crack passwords and stuff like that, but there's gestures for cell phones and things like that too, swipe gestures that are used for security questions and whatnot now. It looks like they build a Lego robot with a finger and are able to automate that process a little bit. I thought that was interesting. I haven't read the whole article, but it's kind of a topic of security, I suppose. Of course, gestures are never the best solution. Problem with gestures and things like this is, and the big problem with cell phones is that fingerprints. It's very easy to tell where you're typing where you're typing your PIN, when you're doing your swipe gestures, unless you wash off your screen, and after each swipe like that, it's usually worthless. But if you do use this sort of thing, something like this may interest you to understand the types of techniques that people are actually going through to potentially circumvent it. So I'm sorry, I'm still on steroids today, guys, so I'm a little rambly.
Oh, neat.
Well, speaking of passwords, I saw a funny XKCD thing
Oh,
this
cartoon?
past weekend. It's apparently an old one, but then I was searching for it to show it off on the show, and I came across this. So the comic is what started this off, and you can see the comic on that page where essentially what it's saying is that we've successfully trained everyone to use passwords that are hard for humans to remember but easy for computers to guess. And it's actually, if we do passphrases, it's much easier for us to remember and much harder for computers to guess. But they apparently created a password generator based off of that principle. So obviously, if you're going to use a generator, be careful because that could be insecure and linking that password to you in some manner. But the comic itself is pretty good, and you could use the generator as a example thing to show how to make these type of passwords that are actually hard for computers to guess versus
Wow,
they're easy for them to guess.
that's a dead on. Wow, that goes right into wow,
I
excellent.
think they're only hard for computers to guess, Brantley, because right,
They're so
algorithm
long.
hasn't
It's
been-
the length of them.
Yeah, but
no, you can't. What can you do with length? What can you do with length when most of the time you're limited in what you can use on
well,
websites and forums and everything else, and you're limited on what you can use. Like 20 characters is almost always the max, and and a lot of times it's like 12.
Well,
8.
okay, but when you start to get up above, when you start to get above 20, you've really sort of reached the level of I think the power that we have available
You need
to us
14.
today.
You need 14. 20 being great, but if you're talking about a passphrase, what passphrase are you going to use in 20 characters?
Well, the like a simple concept is how it's approached to me. So you remember a very long phrase and take the first letter of each word in that phrase or something like that, and use that for your password. The phrase being a relatively longer thing. So that's a way to do it. And 20.
It'd have to be a pretty short.
Um,
I mean, you're talking about the first. What are you talking about? Using the first letter in each word?
Yeah, the first letter in each word, but just make the password extremely long.
Whatever first letter, first 2 letters in each one, something like that.
But
I mean,
some way. There's obviously
but
a
you
ton of different
can't.
ways.
See, I was understanding that you were using the word. Just
Well,
throwing a bunch of
you
words
could do that too. You could do that too, but I think that would cause you to run into that limit more quickly. I think a better system would be to use a passphrase to create a password that would then be not too long, that would still work in most of the systems as they're designed today.
But if you're just taking a few letters from a passphrase that you can remember,
Yeah, but
and
again,
using
as
those few
long as it's
letters.
long enough, if
So
it's
you're
20
going to end up
characters long, if it's
with
20
something
characters
just
long.
as random as the 20 character long password that you could
But
use
you
to
can
generate.
remember it because of the phrase.
Well, I think the key for what Nick is saying is the fact that
How
ones
is it
that are
more
short
secure?
are easier. Yeah. So
Oh, it does
well,
make it easier to shorten like that, but that's the only workaround for what you're describing as far as, the input
I would
limitation
think
of
it
the
would
Well,
password.
be.
and see, here's the other thing. The right algorithm, just before I forget, the right algorithm is going to look at what a person does, what a person says, look at their online thing, and you can probably feed that in for more specific results. But certainly, someone's going to do, some Google research and this and that, and then they're going to take all of these keywords and phrases, and they're going to use that to make their hash table-y thing of password cracking galore. So it's not going to be like this. I mean, it's just another.
Well, I think the fact that there's like if you look at that comic, the way that they're doing it is that one is fairly secure. There's a few 100,000 words in the English language that you can randomly choose from. So that does provide you some entropy there, and then having the length of it's much better. I honestly have to say most all of the accounts that I have actually do allow quite long passwords.
Yeah,
So
they've gotten better with that. I
I
don't
would
If they
think
think
that's
if they
going
the
to be an issue.
if they really want to fix it up, they could just allow all the Unicode stuff, characters, and
yeah, but it'll still be way harder to remember that way.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
oh well, I'm
How
not
the hell are
talking
you
about
going to remember the
I'm
Unicode character?
I only need to remember one password.
for now,
Yeah, for now.
because that's the other side too. I'm kind of not fond of. I've never been fond of a password manager because, I mean, all it takes is one insecurity in that program, and now they have access to all your passwords without even having to.
I know, but how many phrases are you going to be trying to remember the letters to when you have to do I have like 8 billion passwords in that thing. I mean, you don't use the same password for everything.
Yeah, and having to change. I'm saying the whole password system is terrible. There's not a good setup for that at all. But
No.
it is what we have to deal with for the current moment.
All of our security is terrible for everything that we control, information and financial, and it's all terrible. It's all horrible.
That's true.
Um,
And Glenn points out the warm password key trick, which that could definitely take down some entropy, but you'd have to be right there, right after someone typed in their password. And man, I will love it when thermal imaging devices become cheap enough to actually use, because they are not cheap enough to actually purchase and use for random stuff like that right now. Yeah, and Glenn points out that the Unicode thing will be much harder to remember. Alt 2 number, alt number, alt number. That'll make it much more difficult. Anyway, the whole point was that this is a better way to do a password because it does give you a longer password and something easier to remember.
Well, that would be better to tell people who don't use a password manager. I'll concede to that. That would be better to tell my mom. Be like, Mom, think of a phrase, and then take the first letter of each. I don't know.
Well, no, it's not even saying do a phrase. Just pick 4 random words. So just pick 4 random
phrase. I mean, I'd say phrase, not like. I would have to explain. I know. I would have to explain that to her. I mean, just I mean, it wouldn't be like I like pizza.
Well, because they do already have algorithms for taking common phrases, because that's something that people do to remember passwords. So they do scrape music lyrics. They do scrape the internet.
See, that's exactly what I was just fumbling around trying to say a minute ago.
That they do that, which is why you don't want to do that. But if you're just like opening the dictionary at random pages, picking a random word, and putting 4 of those in, that makes it much harder to have a computer guess than you trying to make up
Yeah.
a
But then
letter.
you've got to ask someone to remember 4 random words.
But again, that's
See
not that hard.
well, see the problem with that is how different people remember things, and then if you remember a word, like you might actually remember the meaning of the word and not the actual word. So then you've got like a synonym that you're trying to use.
Speaking of
Glenn says
security,
that he deals with churchies that love to recite verses, and yep, that's their password.
excellent. Well, I mean,
That's
whatever.
not. They definitely have the Bible scraped and ready.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think? An interesting little story I just looked up here. There was an Ivy League professor or whatever. Did you hear about this, Brantley, on the flight?
No, but hold on one second, because this is actually the Defcon talk that I was looking at that talked all about that. He's actually talking about cracking cryptocurrency Brainwallets, which essentially is just Bitcoin stored behind a passphrase.
Mm-hmm.
And he went through some of all of these techniques that we were talking about and things like that. So, all right, go ahead. What about some person that was on a plane?
No, I just thought it was interesting, with the xenophobia potentially. I'll let me post this link, but basically, the guy was an Ivy League professor. I mean, he's a math professor. His business was writing equations, and the woman somebody saw him writing down the equations, and reported them as a terrorist. I mean, I don't know, and he wasn't so, they said they treated him with respect and all that good stuff, but I don't know. I guess couldn't they have done? His argument is that maybe they could have done due diligence and just like looked up a little bit of his history instead of immediately concluding that he.
Well, I mean, the fact that people are doing math as terrorism is kind of scary in the first place. Like, oh my God, that person's doing complex calculations. He's obviously building a bomb.
But it seems like our society is, I think, set to make us dumb. I mean, and to the point where we fear people that have intelligence, and we, I don't know where I'm going with this.
I don't know if our society is set to do that. I think we're just devolving into that.
Maybe. There wasn't as much stuff over the weekend as I had hoped. I guess maybe Mother's Day might have made it a little slower here in the U.S.
There's a whole lot over the weekend.
Yeah, not interesting to me at least. Oh, Phrack returned. I missed that. I don't know if you guys covered it. No, this was Saturday. I remember. God, Phrack's been around forever. When I was back in high school in the '90s, I believe. I remember hearing about Phrack, and they had taken a 4-year hiatus apparently, and just came back. So, take a look.
Glenn, it's way too early to be posting those kind of math phrases. What is Phrack? Why should we take a look?
Oh, it's a hacking magazine, freaking hacking magazine. But it basically was born in the BBS days, and initially back then, what it covered and what I was reading in it was telephone hacking. We would learn how to do the various gray boxing, all that crap stuff. And then it evolved as the internet, came about, and then, is now, I think a modern, up-to-date sort of hacker journal, I guess. I haven't read it in decades, a long time. So.
Hey, so you know how the FDA passed the regulations for e-cigarettes being regulated as tobacco products?
I've heard that, yeah.
So one of the biggest implications of that is the fact that people making their own juices are going to have to get their products tested and regulated and registered with the FDA.
Is that actually because you do
So
understand that people can make food in their homes, preserves and other things, and they don't have to get it tested by the FDA in order to consume it or keep it.
yeah, in their homes, but not to sell it to the general
Well,
populace.
yes, if you're selling to the general populace, absolutely, I understand. Yeah, and I would expect them to enforce
Well, and
something like
I
that.
wonder how they do that, because I mean, you can do that. You can sell your stuff to the general populace at like a food market and stuff.
Well, look, if somebody's selling it, they should be required to follow the law of any other person selling it, whether it be a big company or an individual. So I'm not in agreement there with that. That's a problem. Um, I think enforcement might be an issue, certainly, but I would want them to be regulated in that way. I wouldn't want somebody because it's a quick buck business these days. Because right now it's unregulated, so there's very little overhead, and you can buy, you can set up shop overnight and start doing this stuff and make a good little bit of extra money on the cash. So a lot of people are going to want to get into it really quick, and a lot of people are going to cut as many corners to get that buck as quickly as possible. And
Yeah.
as a result of that, I think that's going to create some bad products, and this is a way of protecting the consumers from that. Now, sure, somebody's still going to make it, and somebody's still going to sell it, and somebody's still not going to follow the law, but I'm hoping that this will improve things a little bit for everyone as far as the safety of those. I just don't see, though, a lot of people. There's not, maybe I'm wrong in this, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of sales. I mean, when people order the stuff, like I have a friend who makes his own juice, and it's so incredibly cheap, he tells me, but he doesn't sell it. I don't know anybody that makes it that sells it. They just make it to save
All the
money.
little vape shops that are popping up everywhere, and they're
Well,
all freaking out about this law because
well,
basically that means they're going to end up having to shut down because either they have to be licensed by the FDA or they're going to have to get each of their products
what's involved in
regulated.
licensing? What's involved in
I don't
licensing?
I don't know. They just came up with the proposition right now,
Listen,
so they don't have
this sounds
details.
like they're already putting something bad in it, and they just don't want anybody to know. I absolutely think they should be regulated, and I know the shops aren't going to like it, but uh, I mean, that's just tough when you're selling something
Well,
that's
it's not that I
a
think they're
regulated
putting something
substance.
bad in it, but yeah, they're going to have to jump through hoops. And one of the comparisons they made for the good side of this was like, uh, or some of them were complaining that the government shouldn't be regulating an agreement between two parties. Like, I agree for you to make my juice and then purchase it. And one of the nice things they had pointed out was like, I mean, you still have an agreement between your doctor, but that doctor still has to be licensed. So, like, that's basically the essential thing is that they're going to have to go through a lot more hoops and pay for a lot more things to be able to sell those products. And honestly, I think that's a good thing. I haven't really walked into a vape shop that I'm like, wow, this is a really nice place. I would feel fine buying my juice from here.
Yeah,
All of
I've
them
been
like,
very
oh, this
hesitant.
seems like people that just had enough startup capital to buy some inventory and sell it
Yeah,
to people.
yeah, I'm agree with you there. That's usually what you see. I think this will raise the bar, and there's just no quick buck. I mean, I understand that you want less regulation as a business, and you want freedom, to compete with the bigger players and a lot of other things, but there has to be some public safety involved. Otherwise, just go straight libertarian and just no government at all. And if you happen to die eating somebody's or consuming somebody's product, then you just don't do it the next time, or or you make sure
I
you.
don't think that's what libertarian means.
Yeah, I don't think you have a lot of option after the first time.
Oh, of death? Yeah, no, you don't have it. But I mean, it's just in other words, you wouldn't go to a shady place. You would choose err on the side of caution and go to go to the place that looked a little bit better. And they could still kill you too, because there's no regulations in that sense either. But it's less likely.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what comes of that. Hopefully, again, it's a win for consumers and businesses will just have to get over themselves. So, here's a funny video to start off your Monday mornings. So someone leaked the Risky Business dance from pre-production, so before they added the take the old records off the shelf song to it, and it just has Tom Cruise dancing around trying to sing the words to the song. It's kind of funny to watch.
He was so young back then. Yeah, I'm sure it'd be a bit of nostalgia this day and age. Was it funny? You think it was funny?
I thought well, I enjoy seeing like the behind the movie magic stuff, so
Oh, gotcha.
it's kind of fun to watch it from that angle. Um, here's some pretty cool skateboard tricks. That's always fun.
Okay.
So, and I had mentioned Radiohead was like trying to be all secretive about their newest album, the first since 2011, but apparently Google Play leaked it. So Google Play Music apparently leaked the Radiohead album far before it was supposed to be released. So
And what happened with radio? I mean, is that a breach of contract? I mean, it seems like there should be consequences to something like that. I mean, usually these things are planned and orchestrated, uh, right? And when that happens, that kind of shakes up the plans. Not to say that it necessarily absolutely ruins something, but I would think that there should be consequences to something like that, especially with big players involved. But this might be another sign that, it's more about the labels, in this case Google, than it is about the artist, Radiohead. There seems to be a general trend towards that, and I don't know. I don't like that idea of it. I don't like the idea that the artists don't have control of their music. They set a date. Let's say they want to release it. They want to have some national event or whatever, or maybe it's tied into some holiday tie-in or something like that. I don't know, whatever. But I can just imagine that somebody's plan on this was ruined as a result, and who's hurting? The only person who could potentially be hurting is Radiohead, and Google just makes a couple more sales. So,
well, it was only released a few hours early, and they took it
oh,
down. So
that's you're blown out of proportion. Then that's not that bad.
still, no, that's something they were planning. So
Well, yeah, okay, so you do agree then. Okay, yeah. I mean, it's a couple hours isn't that big of a deal, but that could be a time zone issue and an actual legitimate mistake. But I just think we should watch these things. I hate, I'm starving artists. I think people should get paid.
they're definitely not starving artists.
Well, Radiohead
Give away
probably
their
not.
music for free for.
All right, dudes. It's time for me to blow. I just sent that ticket to you. Hey, TK Bob. I just sent that ticket. I just looked at the chat for the first time. If I missed anyone, I'm sorry. Shoot, Glenn, Thermos. I don't know you. Hey. So I'm going to get this follow-up thing looked at, and then I'll be back later. Tickets in the system for the thingy, and I'd send it to Lawrence too. You just got a copy. Later, y'all.
Later.
Later's.
Later, dude.
If anyone wants to see somebody play a long ass King Kong or Donkey Kong rather, and get a perfect game, there is this little story. I broke up a little bit, but I don't know if any of you ever grew up playing arcade boxes, but I didn't know that high a score was possible actually in that game.
Cool. So NASA made dozens of their publicly available patents easily searchable. So all of their stuff that's entered public domain that they hold patents on, you can now search through and use to your benefit. So that's fun.
NASA makes dozens of patents. Oh yeah. Awesome. Oh, did you hear about this? This might be a little bit old, but Did we talk about the Comcast and the guy that canceled his service? Um, the reason he canceled was because he was told that his box was ordering pornography. And and he was being billed for it, and obviously he complained and he said he wasn't, so he returned his box, and Comcast kept on telling him he was still doing it. He was like, "No, I have the receipt. I turned the box into you. You can check your records." And sure enough, that was the case. Yeah, just be very, very careful. This guy could have maybe thought, I didn't read the whole story, but the guy could have maybe thought his kid was doing it, or something was going on. Just yeah, don't trust your provider.
Oh yeah. So this happened this weekend too. Uber and Lyft are going to leave Austin after a vote to overturn the requirement for people to have fingerprint background checks done by the city. The vote to overturn that did not pass. So Uber and Lyft are going to shut down their services for now.
That was seemed all too brief. Although I do think I'm starting to believe that maybe some of those things should be regulated a little bit more closely. We've seen quite a few crazy, horror, I guess, stories, related to
Any
them.
person with a car and a license can be a Uber or Lyft driver. So
Yeah, I like that idea initially, but now it's seeming like that maybe that's a little bit too broad. Maybe there's a reason.
well, after somebody claims that the Uber app or Lyft app, I believe it was Uber in this case, got them to kill people while they were working. Yeah.
Yeah.
Story up in Michigan, I believe,
Well,
where
I read
drove
into a
around
lot of.
and killed a bunch of people.
Look, that guy was probably going to roll around and kill a whole bunch of people anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, but why is he an Uber driver? Why did he have passengers in between his killing spree?
That's what made it a news story, because he was an Uber driver, and that's what
Yes.
he did. But
also the fact that he claimed that the Uber app made him do it.
No, but I mean, I'm sure there's a case of some taxi driver losing his mind and going out and killing a bunch of people too. But that doesn't become a news story because there's nothing new about taxi drivers.
I'm pretty sure the only taxi driver I've ever heard of that goes around and kills people was to kill bad guys, and then they made a movie out of it.
Was that a cartoon?
Starring Al Pacino. No, it was a movie called Taxi Driver.
Oh, yeah. Taxi Driver, that's an old movie. I know. Wow, you watch your movies, don't you? Nice.
With one of the best known phrases, "You talking to me? I don't see anybody else here." So
you don't do it as well as he does.
I wasn't trying to do it as well. I was just telling you the phrase, so you can add that to your "don't use that as a password" items.
Oh, is that why?
TKI Bob carries. Be like TKI Bob. Yeah, but I'm not sure if that would have helped in those situations. Like random drive-by shootings, you're not exactly apt to pull your pistol off your hip quick enough for a random car that just happens to be passing you and start shooting at you.
And if anybody plays video games this weekend, saw the big. Actually, it was pre-weekend. I guess it was Friday. I don't know if you guys caught it, but Nvidia made the announcement about the new cards. I don't think it's actually shipping until about a month, but that's very interesting. They bring a lot of power down to a much more reasonable price point, and
yeah, it's a super nice card.
Yeah,
I watched the.
I've been going down the AMD camp because it's cheaper for the video power that they provided, best bang for the buck type thing. But I'm starting to see that Nvidia's has a better product roadmap, it would appear. And if these products are capable, and of course we'll see when AMD puts out their next generation. But I heard AMD's next generation wasn't going to be particularly on the high end, and so it's likely this card will be the dominant player for performance in a single card, single GPU configuration. But
Yeah, the
time will tell.
980 has been.
Well, the 980
Or
currently
the
is the
10.
top rider. The 1080, of course, will probably continue that tradition. But again, I want to wait to see exactly where it stands up to AMD, because if it's a close call, if they beat out, but it's so close and the price is significantly different or
They
better,
just sold off to China.
what's that?
AMD just sold off to China. They're not going to come out with anything cool.
No, they didn't sell off to China. They just have some Chinese fabrication firms producing some of their chips and cross-licensing some of their design stuff. That doesn't, and that's more of their x86 type stuff, not the GPU department. But anyway,
They sold out to China.
okay.
Your stuff is now monitored by the red government. And you're a communist for using AMD.
Wow.
I'm just kidding. Don't take that.
Wow.
Don't make us liable, AMD.
You did take that a little bit far, but okay. All right.
Just jokes.
I don't know if, but I was mentioning earlier about potentially the big players in the cable. This is disturbing, of course. How many customers these things have and how much like monopolies they are.
Yeah, it is. The monopoly side of it's ridiculous, I think.
Hmm.
But, I mean, it's not like you can have 5 companies come in and lay wire for all that stuff. That would make your roadways much more
Well,
ridiculous.
but there's better ways to do it than what's currently happening now, and there seems to be a climate that doesn't allow for anybody to get in. Like, I mean, there's money involved with the actual back end, but there's ways to avoid monopolies even in a system like that. There's ways to share and equally distribute. But I thought,
that's the thing about equally distributing someone else. That's like, so you go and roll out cable to all of your neighbors' houses, and then the government comes in and says, well, Michael, actually, you're going to need to let these other 4 people that didn't do any of that work or own any of that cable use all the cables just like you would and offer products to your customers just like you would.
yeah, but as long as they had to pay
Without
for it,
them
as long as they
actually
could pay
having
for
to-
licensing, they could pay to license it. I believe there's probably stuff that they could do to control that. But yeah, it's a sticky situation. I don't know the answer, but I just believe that there needs to be some oversight to combat the monopolistic
They,
tendencies, the price
they do allow for
gouging,
pay for licensing on phone lines, but you see how well that works out.
well, that's true.
Don't have any company out there that's really beating the Ma Bell original companies because they own all the lines, and then they charge them a fee, so then they pass their fee on to their customers, and now you got to go pay
No, of
twice
course,
as
of
much for
course.
DSL that they're offering the same price or half the price for DSL.
Of course, but at least there's the possibility of competition. Again, I don't know what the right answer is for this. However, there's a big problem when consumers have no choices or just one choice for something, and it's not like it's most of these. You have to understand that most of these people usually have only one option. They can have, like for me, there's DSL, which is just not enough speed for me to accomplish doing work. And
Well, what's
then
ridiculous
there's
is
cable.
the
It's just,
insurance monopoly. So, like right now, you can only get one. And you were talking about how in North Carolina you could only get one insurance option.
oh yeah, well, I mean,
That's a place for ridiculous monopoly. Why is that?
yeah,
Why
well,
can you get one insurance company?
exactly, and
Power and water are the same way.
yeah.
Yeah,
You gotta
Well,
have too much
those
wheel,
are
you put
public
an orange
utilities,
wheel.
and those are controlled a little bit differently. It's not quite the same, but um, like for instance, they can't just.
cable's public utility. So is phones. That's why
No, well,
they're regulated
not
monopolies.
the same. They can turn off your cable TV and they can turn off those things. They can't cancel your water without a
Yeah,
very
they
good
can.
reason. They can, but
They can.
there's they have to
If you
follow a
don't pay
certain.
the bills, they can
No, but there's a
cancel
very
all.
strict
No,
thing
there's
that they have
not,
to.
Michael. I didn't pay my water bill one time, and it got cut off.
Yeah.
You can I was told that you could that there are things that uh, that well, I'll
No,
have to
if
look
you
into
don't
that.
pay your bills, they cut off your services.
It's a contract,
Who
Michael. They don't have. They
Whoever
offer you
told
the
you that
service
you
in
get
exchange
those
for your
for
money.
free extremely lied to you. Um,
Well, my mom works for Department of Water. My mom works for a lot of public utilities, mostly water places, and I feel like she would know on this. But let me clarify. I'll have to clarify.
yeah, Michael, how about you just don't pay your bills for a little while and see what happens? That'd be
No,
your
I
best
mean, but there was
clarification.
some condition she was talking about.
Yeah, money.
Maybe it
If
was
you
maybe
don't
it
have the
wasn't
money,
water. Maybe it was
then you
heat.
get canceled.
Maybe it wasn't
All of
water.
those gas, water, power, cable, phone, all public utilities, all can be canceled if you don't pay your bill.
No,
There's
there's
not a
conditions. There
situation
actually
out
is. Yeah,
there.
in winter they can't turn off your heat. In winter they can't turn off your heat. I'm reading here. It states it's by state, but it depends on what state you live in. Like for instance, Florida has no rules or regulations in place to protect residents at all. For instance, DC, they are illegal if the temperature is below 32 degrees. Also, if a legal customer has a medical condition, disconnection of heating utilities may be postponed for up to 21 days in that case of a medical condition. There's a lot of these exemptions, and they apply because these are public utilities. Now, they're not there's not a global federal thing apparently with this, and like I said,
The
Florida.
chat is saying if you're on welfare is basically your option.
Well, the point is that it's designed to protect the elderly, and families with children, the disabled, things like that. But obviously it is a contract otherwise, and for most people, none of this is going to apply. And yes, they will just be turned off. But there are exceptions for public utilities, and I just don't know what passes on to the cable companies, the phone companies, like you're suggesting
Well, I
in this
mean,
regard,
does
because
that so like you have the whole summer to get it all paid off and then they turn it back on, or you're gonna freeze that winter? Like, I
no,
mean, how does that work
no, they,
out?
they would disconnect it when the temperature got above the right, and then they're free to do it legally. They just can't disconnect you if it's 32, if it falls under 32
But I'm
degrees.
saying if you still haven't gotten it paid off and turned back on, because obviously you're gonna have to pay off your bill from the winter, then you're gonna have to probably put down a deposit and reconnection fee at the
hmm
least.
hmm hmm Yep.
Then it's going to be winter again. If you can't do all of that, do they turn it back on?
No, 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 no. I doubt it. Once it's off, it's off, and they're out of. I think they're out of liability at that point. So whatever it costs for you to get it back to connected, that's your fault. There are consequences to not paying your bill. I'm not saying there's not going to be consequences. However, they are limited in disconnecting certain services, but seemingly on a state by state basis.
Yeah, I guess it is state, but most every case I've seen, they are going to cut off your bills. Or if you don't pay your bills, they're going to cut your stuff off, no matter what.
Well, again, we think of in the general cases, but understand there are exceptions to this rule, and my mom has had to do it. So, and I just found some corroborative evidence of it
GK,
online.
Bob, I think that would get you in a little bit more trouble there. You'd probably be a little bit safer just hooking the stuff up,
Oh,
circumventing those
let me
same
let me talk
hookups.
let me talk about this in case anybody didn't know. User ratings aren't reliable, but I like this because I'm actually a fairly big fan of Consumer Reports. I do trust their process, and they haven't really disappointed me over the years. In fact, I should probably use them more. But they compared that with, of course, user ratings and feedback. Um, and of course, ours Technica always usually does it pretty well. I thought that's interesting just to refresh your guys' minds on those types of things when you're looking up reviews for if you're shopping, let's say on Amazon or on Newegg or wherever you might be shopping. When you're looking at the user reviews, grain of salt, grain of salt. You'll need to do a little bit more research than just that.
I mean, I think user reviews are fairly reliable if you know how to read them.
Well,
And most of the
read
time, what
that.
you want to look for is bad reviews.
Well, I
So
understand
you read
your
bad
idea
reviews on
there,
it
but this was
to find out.
they took those controls into account in this study. I'd suggest you take a look at it. It doesn't seem to. I'm in disagreement too. I mean, I thought it would.
Well, did you watch last week tonight's scientific study stuff yet?
Oh no, I haven't watched him in a while. I need to get back to that.
Because apparently all of these studies are the most unreliable. So
Well,
I'll post the link to that.
like I said, I just like this because of its comparison to Consumer Reports.
Um,
So
I
I find that data to be consistent, and I can't necessarily trust the other data. And when you put them side by side, it seems pretty clear. So
RTM Tech, the the Amazon reviews can be just as deceptive as you got me typing Amazon now. They can be just as deceptive as regular reviews where people are being paid to do that. So that's what you really have to watch out for. But that's why I'm saying if you look at most of the bad reviews, that's where you're going to find out how worse off your product is that you're looking into. I've rarely seen a case where I've seen a whole bunch of bad reviews and the product's still been good. I mean, I don't always base it off that. Sometimes I'm like, well, I don't think I'll run into that situation, so I still go for it. And sometimes the product ends up being perfectly fine for me. So
yeah, that's
there are
the.
times where things like that happen, but
I like your approach, Brantley. There, what you just said. That's a safer way to go about it. But again, you can't just take somebody else's word for it and try to have a couple of pieces of evidence. Corroborative stories beyond just the feedback. Just basically going on the feedback is not sufficient. I think is the biggest point to pull out of this. It needs to be more.
that YouTube link I posted is the scientific studies where he basically talks about how unscientific the studies are. So,
Okay. Okay.
RTM Tech likes GlassDoor review of companies. That sounds like a good review place. Let me look that up to see what that is.
I've heard of glass ceilings, not doors. So
Companies and reviews, glassdoor.com. There's the one he's talking about.
okay,
It
thanks.
says it's not available in Australia. TKA Bob posts a link about the ISIS cyber threat is puny but gaining power. And this is after the DoD launched their cyber attacks on them. So it's going to be interesting to see the first real cyber warfare coming to play. Oh, you can't watch Last Week Tonight in Australia. That sucks, Glenn. I'm sorry. That's a really good show. It is really good. Usually other people end up posting it, so maybe you'll be able to see it later. Or YouTube doesn't have a position against VPN, so private internet access has some pretty good American VPN outputs. Oh, that's cool, RTM Tech. So that Glassdoor place that I posted is a review of companies from current and former employees.
Okay. That's the deal with that. That's nice. Okay. Good.
Yeah,
Good. Good.
that makes for a pretty good review, I would imagine.
I think so. Yeah.
So speakers are boring, right? Well, I
Well,
love visual indicators on my speakers. And
no, I don't want things
having
to
being able
distract me. I don't need more blinking lights. Please.
You can build a miniature speaker with built-in visualization.
Well, for parties maybe.
That's fun.
Okay, so for instance, one of the things that I was so annoyed using my uh, I mentioned it before, the blinking LED, the heartbeat LED or whatever, and that was a huge problem when I was trying to watch a movie. So I don't like distractions so much in a media center, but listening, a less visual, more audio experience, I can easily see maybe now why that would be more appealing. I'm gonna look into that.
Because you're so against duct tape just covering up a blinking light?
Well, I mean, you could do it programmatically. It's much better to do it that way. But I mean, the less is better to me sometimes with lighting. I think lighting's just largely a fad and doesn't really do anything for anyone except I don't know.
TKI Bob also points out that Space Invaders and Sonic are now in the Gaming Hall of Fame.
Oh.
That's the business to get into, is a Hall of Fame place.
I loved Space Invaders. That was such a good game.
Just pick something that you love that doesn't have a Hall of Fame yet and make one. And then you can be like, oh, this should be in here. Completely arbitrarily. Michael doesn't have the same sort of parties that we do. Space Invaders and Sonic were really great games.
Anybody out there have any devices, U.2 devices, like the M.2 for the new SSDs and stuff? If anybody has used U.2 drives, I'd like to know your experience with it. And I haven't seen a whole lot of products on the market that take advantage of it. And sometimes even fewer motherboards that take advantage of it. If anybody hears anything about that, let me know. I'm curious.
Here's oh yeah, VR versions of that Sonic would be awesome, man. That would be cool. So something else you can't do on the Odroid, but you can do with Raspberry Pi, build a warm tube.
Didn't we already talk about this?
No.
Wait, warm tube? No, the vacuum tube is the other one. Or the, what I'm talking about, the speaker or the headphones connector, whatever.
Yeah, this is not that.
Oh, okay.
But Michael also pointed out that Debian's going to drop support for 32-bit processors. Do you know when that's going to be?
Yeah, so I'll post that link. It's on DistroWatch. It looks like, and it's gonna be in the next. Okay, so.
But I mean, that's what I was going to bring up about that is that's also the great thing about open source software is that you can basically fork it at that period and just continue building on your own. So it's not a big deal for Raspberry Pis to continue.
It's not, and I should clarify this. Brantley, and my apologies for not mentioning it to you earlier. However, it looks like this is just a portion of earlier 32-bit processors. It's probably not going to affect modern 32-bit processors.
32-bit's probably going to be fine.
You know what? I based upon, yeah, I think so, but I think it will eventually transition, and so I think the clock might be ticking, and maybe as late as 2 years or a year or two or something like that. But I think it may eventually happen. But look, if they're just dropping like 486 architectures and 586 architectures, and they're still keeping 686, I dare say they're going to drop 686 before they drop ARM. There's probably a larger ARM user base out there now than there is a 686 user base class type processor. Um, so I think you're safe in the short term, but you know,
Well, I mean, too, like, so the Atom processor, the EPC came with
mm,
the original triple
ye-
EPC.
yeah.
It doesn't support something in Ubuntu where they require some CPU feature.
Yeah, NX, maybe NX, no execute support or something, maybe.
No, it's something else. It's one of those things that VirtualBox does. Let me see if I can figure it out real quick. But anyway, my point is that since they required that in Ubuntu, I can't load any version of Ubuntu higher than 11 point something on my EPC.
Yeah, this is very
So
specific to distributions. Certain distributions are dropping support more quickly, and others aren't. Debian's traditionally supported a lot of older architectures longer. Ubuntu has been a little bit more on the just modern forefront.
PAE. Or
Oh,
maybe
physical address extension. Yeah, those
yeah.
usually handle together. PAE and NX, no execute support and physical address extension are usually
Yeah.
tied in some way.
And VirtualBox, it does say PAE/NX. So anyway, that's not supported on my original EPC, so I'm not able to install newer versions of Ubuntu on there. But where I was going with that is I'm still getting security updates for that. So I mean, it's kind of a mixed bag there. They don't fully support it, but they're still supporting it. So, and as long as it's open source and people are stuck in that genre, there's going to be other people probably updating it and releasing security patches and things like that for it. So, TK Bob has been following the transparent solar tech. That's going to be awesome when we can replace windows with solar panels. Glenn, your shop has got to be awesome, man. I would love to see that place, I imagine. RTM Tech setting up his Pi as a Wi-Fi extender. That's cool. I would be interested to hear how your throughput is on it.
Yeah, me too. That's my only concern is that it wouldn't be able to sustain a high rate of bandwidth. Um, but maybe not. Maybe it's just fine. Yeah, by the way, I just wanted another update on the Odroid. So it doesn't have USB 3 ports. Now there are some Odroids that do have USB 3 ports. So it's I was thinking about possibly building a router around the Odroid. Well, it would be a little bit more difficult because I would have to chain a gigabit Ethernet off of USB 2, and that's obviously going to be extremely limiting in bandwidth.
Your Android doesn't have USB 3?
No. There are some droids that do, but not the C2. The C2 has USB 2.
Well, that's why you got it, because it had USB 3.
No, well, no, that's not specifically why I got it. I just needed more performance, really, and I wanted as much connectivity. Gigabit Ethernet. It was really minimum is all I needed in that device. I didn't absolutely need two, but I thought it was a possibility. I thought there was, I don't know why, for some reason I thought it was USB 3, but it's not.
Hey, so speaking of hardware, I found out something extremely interesting this past weekend. So my Bitcoin miner, the S1, has been running off a power supply for about 4 months now, 4 or 5 months now, and essentially I got a 750 watt rated Bitcoin miner, and this Bitcoin miner can run off of a 700 watt without overclocking it. I was overclocking mine, so that's why I got the 750 one, because I wanted to overclock it. And I was using the kilowatt on it, and it was using about 720, 730 watts at all times. So I'm running a power supply at almost maximum capacity for 5 months or so. Power supply died, so that sucks, but I kind of
Running it at
expected it.
100% capacity for that period
Yeah,
of time is not the normal workload for most power supplies,
I
consumer power
kind of
supplies.
expected that, so I wasn't that upset about that fact. But when I went back and had to replace it, I was like, I'm not going to go for this. I've seen what it constantly runs at. I'm wanting to get something a little bit better, so I went with an 850 watt. Then I also looked around for more power efficient rating ones. I didn't
Like
go
the platinum?
platinum
Oh, you didn't go platinum?
because
Oh,
that adds another
it does. It does add a bit.
$75 or so.
Hmm.
So I didn't go with that one, but I did go with one of the better rated gold economy mode ones.
Yeah, they're
And
gold plus ones. Yeah, yeah.
what's really interesting about it though is running the same configuration and settings. This one's only pulling 680 watts.
Yeah, so it's more
So
efficient.
yeah, I'm saving about 40 watts per month, or yeah, about 40 watts
Wow,
per second
that's
off of that. So sometimes, and there is a big price difference between what I paid for, because I think what I paid for was like $80, and this one was $120, but not that big a dependent difference, especially when you consider if I'm going to be running this long term over time. Saving that wattage
well, it's
is
all
going to be tough.
cumulative. It's gonna add up. I mean, it's not gonna change your wallet overnight, but it'll certainly have an impact. And that's interesting to see that because um, I don't know. Do you know what your previous one was rated at as far as the 80 plus is concerned?
I am not sure. I'm sure I could find it here in my Amazon list, which I was going to also point out the Netgear Wi-Fi thing that I got that you could look into for a fairly cheap and already pretty much set up Wi-Fi extender that I would actually recommend, because I'm actually using
Hmm.
it as a Wi-Fi extender right now.
Um,
Talk amongst yourselves while I look that stuff up.
yeah. And then one other question is, what brand is your power supply?
This time I decided to go with the original one was a Corsair, and I decided if it died after 5 months to not really care about it, so I ended up going with a GTX, I think it is, or
GTX.
GFX or something. I don't know. I'll get all that stuff
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Let me know. I've never heard of that, but let me know. That's interesting. Um,
It's like the
let's.
video card people, I think.
Oh, Gigabyte? No. Do they make? No, they don't make. Um, you'll find it. My mind isn't working too well. What do we have? Any other?
EVGA.
EVGA. Okay, yeah, because I have an EVGA too. I found they have a pretty efficient power supplies.
Well, I
They're a
was
little bit
not very
cheaper.
happy actually, because the first one I got was dead on arrival, so
Oh, well, I don't know about that. But that was your original one, the
had me
Corsair.
down for 4 days from bit mining because
Oh,
of it.
sorry.
But
I've been pretty happy with mine. They're cheaper, but they seem to have good efficiencies. So
that's the
and they've gotten
Corsair that
better.
I had, and this is the EVGA that I got. So
I've got the what do I have? The 750. I have the 750 version of that one that you got, the EVGA. And let me see what the
and yeah, this one, the Corsair one, was only bronze certified. So
oh, that's exactly why. Bronze, yeah. The CX, you didn't go. I think their HX is their top end one. Um, yeah,
wow,
yeah. Good call on that switch, and I'm glad you.
Glenn, there's RTM Tech. He's talking in Australian dollars, and Australian is pretty weak compared to the US dollar, so I'm thinking that's probably about accurate for what we're paying. Let's see. Not so much. One Australian dollar is 73 cents American dollar, so one American dollar is $1.36. So maybe it is still a little bit expensive for power there. Oh, plus they got a grid fee. Jeez. I would already go ahead and just include that in your kilowatts per hour. So
I'm sorry, I was muted. Um, I did post an article here, and bad news for dieters out there, but neuroscientists have apparently explained why it's very difficult to lose weight. I know they've probably heard things like this before, but I just thought it was interesting about the numbers and um, how so few it is. For instance, an obese person, their chance of attaining normal body weight is 1 in 210, and 1 in 124 for women. Now, if they're extremely obese, that goes up to 1 in over 1,200, and for men. So there's some interesting things going on, and it talks a lot about what's responsible for that. And it's basically that the body adapts to a certain level, and that it does everything in its power, to basically it tells you that you're starving, even if you do have more than sufficient calories to actually maintain yourself. So it's a challenge, and it involves a lot more than just diet, obviously. And I'm sure, again, none of this is new to anyone out there, but I thought it was interesting again just to look at the numbers and to analyze in a little bit more finer detail why the numbers are the way they are, the explanation for those numbers. And as a neuroscientist, so they use a different approach to this than typically the gastro stomach or other nutritionist people would take on it. So. Not saying it's contradictory, it's bringing up anything terribly new to light, but it is affirming what we're seeing basically in the numbers.
Okay.
Sorry, I know that's not really tech related, but I'm gonna try into diet as well, and yeah.
So TK Bob posted a link about a drone parachute in action. Interesting. Man, the Amazon site is going really super slow, apparently. I was trying to find that Asus router for us, but
I don't know if you guys remember, but I had a friend visit us one day, and he was an expert on lasers, and he specifically implements lasers. He's a government contractor. Anyway, long story short, but he would be interested in this article. Then we're going to be putting lasers on our planes, and I'm just wondering why they haven't already added them to the Shark fleet yet, but at least we'll get them on the planes.
Yeah, that is cool to have a parachute on your drone if it's falling from the sky, and as Glenn points out, is also scary because it would get into trees or power lines and things of that nature.
But it's better that, Tiki Bob points out it is better. Yeah, there can be some severe accidents, and as more people like to push records and take the best shots and whatever, all sorts of things, they're going to push the envelope, and doing that, there's going to be accidents. And I think the parachute, for both cost savings, obviously in the case of the drone, and for protection for humans and animal life, I think it's worthwhile. Sure, yeah, like any other thing, a parachuter or a human parachuter could land up in power lines as well, but you just hope that that's the rare exception and not the rule. United States Air Force already canceled 747 with massive CO2 laser. You now cancel? Do you mean they attacked a 747 like as a target as a?
That's not canceling.
Flights canceled.
Oh! You mean can't? Oh, you mean just cancel the flight? Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. What?
They
What? Can you clarify that statement, please,
I think
RTM
they
Tech?
canceled having one, not cancel it like took it out.
Okay. All right.
So, they canceled the program. RTM.
Oh, I get it. Now I get what you're saying. Yeah.
So that's the router that I have, and that one's a little bit expensive to do just as a extender, but this one's a lot more reasonably priced, especially when you take into consideration. Oh, dang it! It didn't give me the right copy and paste for that. Sorry.
Post it one more time for me.
Oh, why is that not copying and pasting correctly?
What are you?
Oh, because I'm copying from the same page. That makes a difference.
This is scary coming from
This
me.
one.
There we go. That
one makes for a better one. That one you can get for about $60, which if you take into consideration a Pi plus its accessories and case and all that, you end up about that range anyway.
Yep.
But Asus has a super nice interface for setting up a repeater, and they do work extremely well. You don't have to have an Asus on the other side. This will just connect to any wireless that it can see and connect to. So yeah, and that one's AC coverage, so pretty snazzy. And they do work well as repeaters. I actually have two set up in my house, so it works really well. It's interesting because what that actually is for, in my case, is not to extend the Wi-Fi necessarily, but to extend my LAN ports, because I have two devices that I need that only have connection for wired connections, but they are at the other side of my house from where my router and stuff is set up, so I had to use an extender, and luckily Asus is pretty well set up to do that and give me 5 additional LAN ports on each one at that point, so pretty good usage there. So RTM Tech posts the link about the 747 with the CO2 laser.
I saw that.
All right, well, let's wrap it up with one more tech link here, and then we gotta get to work this morning. Make Use Of has a pretty lengthy article on data recovery tools, and even goes into if you're able to use them, what kind of things you're looking at, what kind of things you're looking to recover with, and some of the options out there. They only give you 3 programs, which that is Recuva, Disk Drill, and PhotoRec.
I didn't even cover the one I like, or the one.
I haven't heard of Disk Drill. I've used the other 2, so might be interesting to see how that works. But apparently previously it was only available for Mac, but now it's Windows again, so those are some options. And what's the one that you like, Michael?
Oh, not the one I particularly like, but the one that I've just had some measure of success with, and that's the one that Matthew got helped me with. Get Data Back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if this is if they're the same type of products. I didn't really get to look at your link yet, but let's see.
That's funny, Glenn. He has some routers set up on the perimeter to force his neighbors to channels he wants. Fighting for airspace, I hear ya. All right. Well, I think on that note, we're going to wrap her up for this Monday morning. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. RTM Tech, Glenn, and TKI Bob. I think those are the ones talking with us and posting links. So
Yeah,
thanks,
guys.
everyone, for joining us and being here and listening to us ramble.
Thanks for a great start to a new week here. And
Oh, and
yeah.
Thermos is in there, too. So, hey, Thermos.
Oh, Thermos, hey.
And he uses Ease US data recovery, which I've used that as well, and they do a pretty good setup and can recover a lot of stuff where some of them can't. So theirs though is a premium. You get to see what files you can recover, and then you have to pay to actually recover those files. So if you've already purchased them, it's awesome. If you haven't,
Thank you, Bob, for the advice. Yes, make it a great day. If it's not working for you so far, it's a lot of opportunity to improve it going forward. We have plenty of hours ahead.
There you go. So we will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. And again, we are here to provide support and answer any question about our software and services. So if you ever have that, we'll be more than happy to stop our rambling.
And I have graduation tomorrow, so I will not be present. So you guys take care. And I'll see you guys on Wednesday at, I guess, the 2 o'clock show.
Sounds great. Graduation. All right. Well, anyway, let's get out of here. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We will be back tomorrow. Take her on out, Michael.
All right. Sounds good. We're going to disconnect the